The day after he was certified as the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump held a press conference during which he blew up the entire British Empire constructed post-World War II system. Along with Elon Musk, Donald Trump Jr., and other members of his team, Trump is challenging the very economic and political structures of imperialism, which is the real name for globalism. I'm Susan Kokinda, and that's what I'll be talking about in this January 8th Midweek update. Let's start with the countries which are in the immediate crosshairs of Trump and Musk, namely Britain, Canada, and Greenland. What do they have in common? They're ruled by monarchies. Think about it. It's the 21st century, for God's sake. It's almost 250 years since we Americans overthrew King George III and showed the world that sovereignty must rest in a nation and in its people, not in some ruler anointed by oligarchs and powerful financial interests. So let's start with Britain. On Sunday, Musk put out a post asking if America should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government. At least 2 million votes, and the vote is 58% to 42%, 58% in favor. Now, as far as that government of Britain, let's not forget that members of Keir Starmer's Labour Party were all over the United States during the 2024 election, campaigning for Kamala Harris and lobbying Congress to impose draconian British-style censorship on the United States. Then there's Canada. Justin Trudeau has just resigned by the force of Trump's pending policy revolution. Now, here's a very important fact that many people don't know. The sovereign in Canada is the British monarch, in this case, King Charles. Now, Trudeau was brought down by Trump, but he could have been removed by the stroke of a pen by King Charles. Charles has been one of the chief organizers globally of the entire Green Agenda, and his father, the late Prince Philip, was infamous for the following quote: "Human population growth is probably the greatest long-term threat to survival. If it is not voluntarily controlled, it will involuntarily be controlled by the increase in disease, hunger, and war. In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation." Prince Philip told that to People magazine in 1981. So Donald Trump is not wrong when he says Canada would be better off as the 51st state. Canadians would enjoy the rights of actual sovereign citizens rather than be subjects. George Papadopoulos, the former Trump campaign advisor who was caught in the crosshairs of the Get Trump Russiagate operation, recently posted that after Canada, the next dominoes to fall might be the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, along with the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand constitute the Anglo side of the notorious Five Eyes intelligence shaping operation, which has been integral to the construction of the surveillance state. Edward Snowden described this as a supranational institution which does not abide by any laws of any countries. Now turn to Greenland. In his press conference, Trump questioned whether Denmark, which, yes, is a monarchy, actually has a legal claim to rule Greenland. You can use your favorite search engine to check out the ties between the royal families of Britain and Denmark. Donald Trump Jr. landed in Greenland with other members of the Trump team as people in Greenland began raising the call for independence. All of this has set the hair on fire of the propagandists of the global elite. Start with CNN. Their headline read, "Trump's threats to Greenland, Canada, and Panama explain everything about America first." Or the London Guardian. Donald Trump is refusing to rule out using American military force to retake control of the Panama Canal and seize Greenland. Of course, if you listen to his press conference, when Trump is asked point blank if he will use force, he says simply no. And throughout, he talks expansively about using economic tools, like his favorite tool, tariffs, instead. Now, obviously, Trump's remarks about the Panama Canal are part of the freakout. In his press conference, he pointed out the obvious, that the canal was built at great cost to the United States, both financial and human, 38,000 lives, that Jimmy Carter sold it for $1, and that the United States is being treated inequitably in terms of the current operation of the canal, not to mention the enormous security implications given the Chinese economic influence. This is yet another case of the imperial elite using the self-interest of another country to weaken the security of the United States, that is, if we roll over. Well, yesterday's press conference made one thing pretty clear. That is over. The United States is back. And the Trump effect is impacting not just countries already mentioned, but along with Elon Musk, the Trump effect is immediately shaping the political future of countries like Germany, France, Croatia, and Austria. We saw the Italian Prime Minister Meloni's visit to Mar-a-Lago a few days ago, and Elon Musk will be hosting a discussion with the German Chancellor candidate of the AfD, Alice Weidel, tomorrow on X, which has provoked the expected firestorm involving the entire Euro elite establishment, which is calling for using the full weight of Europe's draconian digital laws against Musk. I keep my eye on British publications like the Financial Times, especially their chief foreign policy correspondent, Gideon Rachman, who speaks for the City of London. His recent headline read, "Putin plus Trump spells trouble for European security." That takes me to the final element of Trump's press conference that I'm going to discuss before I locate all of this in a longer sweep of history. There is much more to his press conference, especially on the economic side, and I'll leave that to other coverage on our website. Trump discussed the real origins of the current war with Ukraine. Quote, "For many years, long before Vladimir Putin said you can never have NATO involved with Ukraine, they have said that. That has been written in stone. Somewhere along the line, Biden said they should be able to join NATO. Russia has somebody right at their doorstep. I can understand their feelings about that." And a few sentences later, Trump said, "When I heard the way Biden was negotiating, I said he will end up in a war." So let's take a few steps back in time. Let's go back 70 years to the end of World War II. Before he died, Franklin Roosevelt told Winston Churchill at one of their final summits, "Winston, we are not fighting this war to reestablish the British Empire, or the French or the Dutch for that matter." And in so many words, Churchill responded, "Yes, we are." Roosevelt's intention for the post-war world was to work with other major allied nations, including the Soviet Union and China, as sovereign nations. He did want to end colonialization and imperialism, and to use the might of the United States to foster the kind of economic development through our industrial exports, which would aid in creating a world of sovereign, stable nations. Roosevelt died before the war ended, and a very little man, British puppet Harry Truman, became president and facilitated the empire's plans for the post-war world. This was announced by Winston Churchill in his infamous Iron Curtain speech in Fulton, Missouri. That plan was to pit especially the United States, the Soviet Union, and China against each other in Britain's great game of geopolitics. And that pretty much succeeded, with plenty of smaller geopolitical conflicts, which have cost millions and millions of lives throughout the world along the way. This is what Donald Trump intends to end. The United States will no longer be a tool of British imperial foreign policy and its forever wars. This is not just kicking over the chessboard. This is the equivalent of tearing down the palace in which the chessboard is located. And this is why the confirmation of Trump's nominees, especially on the national security side, is so important. Promethean PAC has been circulating a petition entitled "Confirm Them All," the link of which you can find in the comments. The New Year's Day terrorist attacks underscore even more the importance of getting Trump's national security team in place. The biggest pushback right now is against Tulsi Gabbard as head of DNI. If you're intent on taking down the Anglo-American intelligence, lawfare, surveillance apparatus, or the deep state as it's known, this is one of, if not the most important position. Hearings on her nomination were supposed to have started next week, but Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, has forced a delay. So keep up the pressure on especially Committee Chairman Tom Cotton, whose fortitude in standing up to the intelligence apparatus can reasonably be questioned. Cotton is up for re-election in Arkansas in 2026. Now, let me take up one more aspect of the British Empire's post-war evolution. The most important thing which Roosevelt was able to bequeath to the post-war world was the Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate monetary system. That allowed for a modicum of stability in international trade because the dollar, as the world's reserve currency, was fixed to a gold reserve standard, and it was able to function as an instrument of economic sovereignty. The end of the Bretton Woods system in 1971 was the first step in the financialization of everything. Our currency was no longer a sovereign currency. It was a commodity to be bought and sold by the global financial elite. And this was the first step in a cascade of policy changes which ended up financializing everything: healthcare, food supply, transportation, almost every sector of our economy. By the way, how many of you know that the World Economic Forum, which is meeting the same day as Trump's inauguration, was founded in 1971? It was obviously established to preside over these past decades of destruction. But there was one more step. As long as the United States was being used as a pawn against the Soviet Union in the Great Cold War game, a certain level of national industrial development had to be tolerated for defense purposes. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, the globalists entered into what they called the end of history. What they really meant was the end of the nation-state. And the full force of their policies was then unleashed to completely gut the United States economically, using free trade and environmentalism as their chief tools. Of course, Europe was treated to the same assault with the creation of the European Union and the death of sovereignty there. As one of my colleagues said yesterday, Donald Trump's return signals the end of history. Or rather, to put it affirmatively, the return of the nation-state. Donald Trump's press conference yesterday and the actions of the rest of his team are like an unfolding musical composition, developing the theme of the return of national sovereignty and the mission of the United States. The Washington Post gets it with a headline: Trump takes America first to its expansionist endpoint. And they cite the manifest destiny of MAGA. They, of course, are looking at it from a negative standpoint. But what it really is a recognition of is that America is back. It's not surprising that the world's presumed elite are in a frenzy, and they're using Joe Biden to wreak as much as possible on the way out. So we have two immediate challenges. First, keep Donald Trump safe. There are justified concerns, expressed by, among others, Dan Bongino, about whether the inauguration events and Donald Trump himself can be protected, especially given the new elements of drone warfare. Trump and his team must understand the level of threat, and hopefully they will make their decisions on how the inauguration ceremonies will unfold from that standpoint. But beyond January 20th, we have the ultimate challenge. It's one thing to tear down the different layers of the post-war imperial system. It's quite another to build anew an economy based on the principles of the American system of economics. The movement launched by Lyndon LaRouche, which took off in 1971 in the wake of the teardown of Bretton Woods, and which shaped the thinking of those of us who founded Promethean Action, is devoted exactly to that challenge. I encourage you to become part of that, subscribe to the Promethean Action newsletter, become a sustaining member, and in particular, check out Bruce Director's Saturday class, which can be found on the website. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for Barbara's Saturday Wrap-Up.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.